Hey everyone, Nick here from Talking Cardboard, and I'm with my wife Ashley.
Hi, everyone.
And today we're actually going to talk about a board game convention we recently attended called Con of the North, which is a convention located in near Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it was held last month in February. Hey everyone, Ashley and I are off to Con of the North in Plymouth, Minnesota. Are you excited, Ashley?
Oh,
She's so excited to
yeah.
play a full weekend of games. So we'll see you guys soon. And this is the second time that we have attended this convention in Minnesota. And being from Minnesota, it's nice to see any kind of board game convention that we have. And I have to say, I feel this is the largest board game convention that I'm at least aware of in the state of Minnesota. If there's other conventions I should be aware of, please list those in the comments section because I definitely am interested to learn if there's are other ones. But nonetheless, from what I gather, this is the largest one we have. So I just arrived at the Con of the North here at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Plymouth, Minnesota. Today I don't have any events planned or scheduled. All my events are scheduled for tomorrow and Sunday with Ashley. So right now I'm just going to go get my badge, get checked in, and then get kind of a lay of the land of the con. I'm definitely going to hit up the vendors right away since it's the first day of the con. I'm hoping there's still some good deals that I can find and maybe get some games on my bucket list. But other than that, I'll probably not be here very long for today as our events start bright and early tomorrow morning. But with that said, excited to be here, and I'll be reporting back soon. And a lot of people, I will say, think it's also an RPG convention because a lot of the events are RPG games. And that may very well may be true. I didn't count the total number of board game events and compare it to the number of RPG events. But in my opinion, there were a lot of different board game events for all sorts of board games, and I consider it a board game convention. And it's called Con of the North Game Convention, so I should say that it's not technically classified as they don't call themselves a board game convention. With that said, it was located in a Crown Plaza hotel, like I said, near the city of Minneapolis. And I would say there was maybe about 1,000 people total throughout the weekend. This is the first time that Ashley and I went to a board game convention and actually stayed overnight at a nearby hotel for the length of the convention. And regrettably, we didn't stay at the hotel of the convention because I thought there was this other hotel within that was nearby that seemed like a better value. But I think you felt that it would have been nice to just stay at the hotel that the convention was at. And
Yeah, it would have been much more convenient, I think.
yeah, so if we were to do this again, we probably would just stay at the hotel that the convention was at. Well, I successfully did get my badge, and it's extremely windy outside, so my hair looks like I just walked through a tornado, and it's extremely cold. With that said, I was a little disappointed they didn't give you lanyards with your badges. What they are doing, which is a unique idea that I've not seen implemented elsewhere, is a colored wristband system to designate how comfortable you are being around others. So green meaning you're fine being close to other people, yellow means you I think want a couple feet apart, and then red's like don't get near me. So kind of an interesting idea. And then they give you a little packet with some general information about the convention. The first thing I want to talk about the convention was the vendor hall. There were events Friday, but we didn't get there till later in the afternoon. So by that time, there wasn't really any events that we would have been able to attend. So I checked out the vendor hall right away to see if there were any people selling board games for good value. And I was surprised to see not a ton of publishers. Chip Theory Games was there, and I want to say Leader Games had a booth, but not a lot of other publishers, considering the fact Fantasy Flight Games has their main location, now Asmodee, of course, but Fantasy Flight / Asmodee have one of their main office locations here in the Twin Cities. I would have thought they might have more of a presence at this convention. What were some of the things that you thought of the vendor hall, Ashley?
Just in general, I thought it was kind of small. There weren't that many board game booths, I think, to visit, but we did have a couple conversations with some of the vendors, like There was a guy painting miniatures that Nick was able to talk to and get some tips from. And then we were able to do a small walkthrough of one of the Chip Theory games that they had sitting out. So that was really nice. We also got a coupon for a store in the metro area that Nick likes to go to get a lot of board games. We were able to go there after and get a pretty good deal on some of the games that he's been eyeing. So that was nice.
So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Ashley. The guy that we talked to is named Tom Nelson, and I guess he's known as the Midwest Miniatures guy. And he talked to Ashley and I for quite a bit about miniature painting because it's something that I'm trying to get more into and have a lot of difficulty doing a lot of the different painting techniques. So this Tom talked to us for a while, and he was really nice. So definitely check out his website if you're interested in miniature painting yourself. And yeah, the other highlight definitely was talking to a representative from Chip Theory Games. I have the game called Spire in my collection, but don't really get to the table, and they had it set up for a demo, so we sat through a demo of that, and that was fun to do. And then yeah, the other from a board game purchasing perspective, really the highlight was getting this 20% off coupon for the store called The Source Comics and Games near Minneapolis, and we took advantage of that on our way back home on Sunday. So yeah, that was the vendor hall, and then the first event we actually had was Saturday morning. Everyone, Nick and Ashley here, about to go to the Con of the North here in Plymouth, and first we have to address the elephant in the room. No, not that one. Just how cold it is outside. I know you guys probably can't understand the cold that we have going on here in Minnesota, but it's below zero and windy, so it's freezing cold, but it's not going to stop us going to the Con of the North. And I guess it's kind of fitting since it is Con of the North, and that's kind of the weather you might expect at a convention called Con of the North. So with that said, we have a very full day of activities. I know Ashley's super excited about all the games we have to play today. First, we have HeroScape. HeroScape is a game that I have in my collection right here. And unfortunately, like many of my games, it's one that I've not really gotten to the table very much. And so when I saw that they had an event for this game at Con of the North, I was like, I'll sign up for it and learn how to kind of the basics of the game. And so we did. And overall, I enjoyed my time playing the game. What were some of the things you liked about it?
One of the main things I liked was that it was super easy and quick to learn. A lot of the games later in the day that we did sign up for, there were a lot of rules and kind of dense material to go through beforehand, so it was nice just to have a quick run through of all the rules, and then Nick and I did just some combat together, so that was nice and quick and easy. So
yeah, they had these pre-made scenarios. They actually had them glued together on like cardstock, which was kind of fun, cool, nice idea. It sounds like they take the game masters bring their setups to schools and stuff. So that's really cool to hear that they do that for on their own time. So they had a nice setup. The armies that we were playing seemed pretty basic in that they were all almost, for both of us, we had like all the same type of units. So to me, what made this game kind of interesting is that there's so much variety in the types of units, and the course this game's been out of print for many years, but over the course of the years it was being printed, they came out with units of all different themes, including fantasy themes and science fiction, and then historical themes. So I would definitely like to try this game again with more of the other types of units out there. What were some of the things maybe that you didn't like so much about HeroScape?
I think once we started getting into actually playing the game more, it seemed very repetitive because we were just essentially rolling dice to try and hit each other's armies, so it got kind of repetitive in that aspect.
Yeah, it did kind of turn into a dice chucking fest, but I will also say that I think they were trying to give us scenarios that were easy to get into, which may have impacted the complexity of the game we were playing. And then also I think they left out other elements that you normally would have in a game of HeroScape, like these glyphs that typically you can move your armies and characters to get some sort of advantage, and that might then of course kind of create more variability in the gameplay. But definitely did kind of get repetitive towards the end of both the games we played. So anyway, that was the first event. After HeroScape, the next event we had scheduled was for another game I have in my collection, called Tank Duel. But unfortunately, when we showed up to the game room, or the room where that was supposed to be scheduled, the game master was nowhere to be seen. There was one other gentleman that was also waiting for the game, and I think mentioned that he had heard that the game master probably wasn't going to be showing up. So unfortunately, didn't get to play Tank Duel, although I don't think Ashley was too disappointed about not having to play that game.
It's nice to have a break during the day.
Yeah, we did have a pretty jam-packed schedule for Saturday. So after that, the next game we had lined up was for Mechs vs. Minions. And as you see, I also have this game. Have yet to play it and saw the event for it at kind of the North, and I was like, okay, this is probably a great opportunity to learn how to play this game. This is a game by the publishers of the video game League of Legends, Riot Games, and they came out with this board game, cooperative board game several years ago that uses a programming mechanic similar to the Robot Rally game. And what makes this game, I would say, kind of unique is just the impressive component quality of this game. All the main characters are really high quality miniatures, and they're painted. And you get tons of miniatures, and a lot of the other components are just very well done. And it's kind of got a legacy style element to it as well, where you go through missions and you open up boxes as you go progress mission by mission. So what were kind of the things that you liked about this game?
I think the first thing that stood out was the game master that we had was very entertaining. He knew the game very well, which made it fun to learn, and he made the rules very easy to learn as well. So that was one of the main things that I noticed. Yeah,
definitely. For any game, having any game at a game convention, having a game master that you can tell enjoys being there is huge in terms of the enjoying that experience of playing whatever game you signed up for. And definitely in the case of Mechs vs. Minions, we were with someone that really appreciated this game, but was also friendly and charismatic, and definitely made the whole experience that much better. And then another thing that you mentioned too, Ashley, which I have to agree with as well, is that this game doesn't suffer from the alpha gamer syndrome that a lot of co-ops might suffer from, because you have so much to worry about yourself with your programming your cards that it's difficult for someone to really tell you how to program your cards, because it's just a lot to understand. You're so focused on your own programming of cards that it's really difficult to make decisions for someone else. So it kind of prevents that alpha gamer type of issue from really showing up in this game. What was maybe anything you didn't really like about this game?
I couldn't actually think of a lot of bad things about this game. I think by far this was my favorite game that we played during the convention. Yeah,
so that's a hint to me that she's going to play this with me now at home.
Oh, yeah.
I will say on the second scenario we tried, I felt like after a few turns, I had the cards that I wanted in my program, and I didn't want to mess with it. And literally, I kept it that way, kept it locked in for the rest of the game, and it just kind of almost felt silly that I'm not really changing my cards like I feel I should be in this game. How often that might actually happen, it maybe that was a kind of a rare situation, and maybe it was kind of by good fortune that I was in a position where I didn't have to worry about changing out my cards. So that was maybe one thing that I thought was a little disappointing, but for sure overall this was a fun game to play, and definitely hope to play it at home here again soon. So after Mechs vs. Minions, we moved on to the game called Clinic. And Clinic, as you can see, is I have what's called the deluxe edition of the game, and it comes with this thing called when I got it, I think I backed it online, or it came with this an extension to the core game, which the core game already has a lot of content in it. And this is, as you can probably tell from the box art, a hospital-themed game in which players are competing against each other to try to essentially design an optimal hospital to achieve the most victory points. I'm not sure if they call them victory points in the game, but essentially victory points by earning money to then use to upgrade your hospital clinic further. And it's a very, I would say, pretty heavy Euro game.
The thing I enjoyed the most was just the overall theme. I work at a hospital, so it's nice to have some familiarity with some of the aspects of the healthcare world in the game. So that was probably my main thing that I liked about it.
Yeah, so we have an insider expert here. How would you say that this game kind of really thematically, mimics what a real hospital's like?
I know it's based from Europe, but I would say instead of naming it clinic, it's more of a hospital type game.
Okay, yeah. So you felt that we were working with a hospital, not a clinic.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah.
Because I then have to agree with Ashley. It's like they call it clinic, but that could have just been kind of a translation thing. That now we call it that in the U.S. So for me, I appreciated how the theme came out in the not being a hospital expert. I did appreciate how the theme comes out in the mechanics. Like you have to have cars for your patients and staff, and by having you need that means you can only build so much building because then you're going to start taking up your parking space, and so you need to manage that. And I feel like the game does a good job of you feel like you're building up an engine. You have a few different rooms to start the game with, but to get more, and there's always like you're always short of something. You either want more rooms to handle more patients, but to have more patients, you need more doctors. And I feel like that's kind of what the real life would be like. You need to have all three, more of everything, in order to justify having an extra doctor, or having more patients, or having a larger hospital. And you can only do so much in the game, so you have to be very strategic about when you want to go after a better doctor or when you want to upgrade your hospital to try to optimize that whole calculation as much as possible. So with that said, I guess what are maybe some things you didn't really like so much about the clinic?
I will say it was a lot of rules to learn. Unfortunately, our game master, he said he hadn't played the game in a few years, so I think that kind of bogged down the learning of the rules to begin with. And there were some things that were missed when we were going through the rules. So I think that affected decisions that were made throughout the game that could have affected the outcome, for me personally, at least.
I feel that and I will say, I don't think this rule book maybe was as intuitively written as it could have been. And I do think some things are slightly lost in translation too. And then I would also want to add, this is both a positive, but also you could look at it as a negative, is there's a lot of different modules that you can add to this game to add more flavor and variety and complexity. But that's the downside, is you're adding more complexity to the game. But overall, I do think it's still a solid design. It's a solid game for sure. But just know that it's definitely a brain burner compared to a lot of other games out there. So a little bit of a bittersweet moment today because it's the last day of the Con of the North convention. And we had to get up bright and early. We have an 8 a.m. event, which is originally planned to be, originally, I was going to do a large game of Memoir 44. It was like a 12-player game of Memoir 44. But then recently I saw an event open up for the board game Return to Dark Tower, which by Restoration Games, which I've heard a lot about and sounded really cool. So I switched from Memoir 44 to that game because I also thought Ashley might appreciate that game more since it's a cooperative game. But last night, the game master said that he wasn't able to get his copy of Dark Tower in time, so instead he switched it to Sleeping Gods, which also happens to be a game I've heard a lot of great things about. Also a cooperative game, also a game that I actually would be equally interested to play. So in a little bit, we'll be playing Sleeping Gods, and that will be the last event for us at Con of the North. We'll return home. For Sleeping Gods, what were some of the things you enjoyed?
I really liked, they clearly put a lot of time into the stories and the narrative of the game in general, so it was nice to kind of read along, and they added some comedy in it and some seriousness, so it was entertaining.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned, this is a game by Red Raven Games by the designer Ryan Lockett. And so some of you may be familiar with the games Near and Far and Above and Below. And my understanding is, of course, Sleeping Gods definitely uses a lot of the mechanics that were introduced in those games, which I have not played Near and Far, Above and Below. But definitely this game has a lot of inspiration from those games. But this is, a seafaring pirate kind of themed version of Above and Below and Near and Far. And as Ashley just mentioned, you can tell there's so much work put into the narrative elements of this game. There's so much story to go through. And I think the game master had mentioned that, one playthrough of the game is only going to allow you to maybe get through 10 to 15% of the actual content and story that the game comes with. So you're going to have to play through this game multiple times. And one campaign of the game was like 20 hours, 30 hours. So you can imagine the amount of time it could actually take you to fully, explore everything this board game has to offer. So for sure, you have to give a lot of credit to the designer for all the work and effort put into this game. And I guess with that said, what were some of the things you didn't like so much about Sleeping Gods?
So for me, I think the overall concept of the open world game, I think it's called, is just not having a concrete ending to it and kind of just rummaging around and going to different places to explore things. While it is entertaining while you're doing it, I like to have a definite end to the game. So
yeah, so this is a very sandboxy style game where you do have kind of like this high level objective that you're trying to complete, but there is by no means a set path to achieve that objective. So I agree that for sure some people may not necessarily be into a game like that, and something to be aware of. And it's a big time commitment too. Like, if you want to finish a game of this, you're gonna have to invest a ton of time. Otherwise, I do want to say I appreciated some of the unique mechanics that this game had when it came to the combat resolution, and how you are trying. It's kind of it was very puzzly in terms of how you're damaging enemies and trying to like maximize the damage you do to multiple enemies at the same time. So that was kind of cool, and definitely the way the story kind of builds upon itself was fun to play with. So with that said, that was the last of the events that we had at the convention. And one thing I also want to mention was just besides the vendor hall, the other, of course, important aspect of a convention is the board game room, or the open gaming room. And I was pleasantly surprised to see how busy the open gaming area was. It seemed like almost every table was being occupied, so that's great to see. Good sign that in-person board game conventions definitely are back, so to speak. So that's great. I don't know if they actually had a huge game library on site. I think all the games that I saw people playing were just games that they had brought themselves. So, that's one thing maybe in the future the convention might try to look into, is getting their own gaming library. But I guess any kind of other thoughts you had about the convention as a whole?
I think the last thing I can think of is just the concept of having it in a hotel in general. I felt like a lot of times we were just kind of wandering around a hotel, and it felt kind of weird in that aspect, and they didn't really have a good map to go off of, so there were a lot of these like conference or ballrooms that these game events were being held at. So there was at least one game where it took us a while to find where it actually was located, because they didn't really have good signage or maps available. So
yeah, it was kind of a disconnected feel because of the setup that they had in this specific hotel. So unclear if that's really something they have the opportunity to change in the future. But I agree that it was sometimes difficult to find where the events were, especially because there weren't as many maps that I would like to see around the convention hall. Now, or hotel. Now, I do want to quick point out that they did give us packets. And in the packet, they did give us a map. So everyone was given a map, but it would have been nice if they just posted more maps around the actual convention space. And then they give us a 20-sided die, and then of course the badge. And I think that was kind of the last giveaway that or the last item that they had in these packets. So, but other than that, I think we covered the major aspects of the convention, of the Con of the North convention. So I know I for sure want to come back to it next year and try out as many new games as possible. Hopefully, Ashley would want to come back too, yes. Right? Okay, cool. So if you guys want to enjoy, hearing about conventions, definitely. Like this video and put in the comments that you enjoy this kind of thing. Also, like I mentioned earlier, please mention in the comments some of your favorite conventions, specifically conventions in Minnesota, or at least in the Midwest area, since that's where we're from, so it's easier for us to get to those types of conventions, or conventions located in that area. But with that said, thanks guys for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm Nick from Talking Cardboard.
I'm Ashley. And Verde.
And Verde. We hope to see you guys again soon.